Hi, everyone. Welcome to ILTA's YouTube channel. My name is Jeff Cox, and I'm the Director of Content for UniCourt. Today, we're going to be talking about API solutions for corporate legal operations teams. To kick us off, let's first answer the question that might be on some of your minds. What is an API? API stands for Application Programming Interface. At their core, APIs are data pipelines that can push and pull data in real time. APIs are incredibly common, and we use them regularly in our daily lives. If you've ever used an online booking site like Expedia or Travelocity, you've used APIs. When you enter in your destination and travel dates, the travel site then sends API calls to all the hotels, airlines, and rental companies seeking their best rates and deals for your travel needs, and puts all of that disparate data right at your fingertips. Similarly, whenever you use an ATM and ask to check your bank account balance, the ATM terminal sends out an API call to your bank and asks how much money you have in your account, so you can see if you have the funds needed to make a withdrawal. And in the digital world we all live in, the dozens of apps we have on our phones are all constantly making API calls to collect and push data around to make our lives easier and our online experiences even more seamless. So what are some of the best practices for selecting APIs? Let's talk about 10 things legal ops should consider when selecting an API solution. The first item you should look for is an API first approach. When considering or looking at APIs, the overall approach the legal technology provider has taken in developing its APIs is incredibly critical. The API provider offering, so the question is the API provider offering app-based APIs tied exclusively to the functionality and the data currently available in their existing applications, or do they have API-first APIs with full access to the underlying data sets that are not limited to any specific application? Other questions are the APIs easy to integrate? Can you easily perform searches, downloads, and automated data pools? The second item you should review is data coverage. In addition to the structure, an important consideration for legal ops is the actual data sets flowing through a provider's APIs. Even the best structured APIs are not worth purchasing if the data you need is not available. So questions here are, how comprehensive is the API provider's data coverage? Do they cover the specific courts, legislatures, agencies, or other data sources that you need? Does the API provider have an active data roadmap? Is it looking to expand coverage into new sources? Do they work with clients to gather feedback on what new data sources to add to their roadmap? The third item for you to consider is the use case alignment. One of the most critical topics for legal ops to consider when choosing the right legal data vendor is the alignment of the available API solution with their unique use cases. Determining whether the solution matches your team's applicable use cases often sparks or ends the conversation on whether to move forward with an API provider. Some questions here are, have you already identified the problems your legal ops team is seeking to solve, and how data plays a part in solving those problems? Do the provider's APIs align with your needs for gathering specific intelligence or insights, or streamlining your data-intensive internal operations? The fourth item on our list is the API documentation. The API documentation a provider holds out is a key indicator of the time and effort they've invested to make their APIs as easy as possible for your team to integrate. So some questions here. Is the API documentation publicly accessible for you to review? Do the API docs have a professional look and feel? Are they easy to read and understand for a non-developer? Some other questions, are there sample code bases and walkthroughs available for how to use the APIs? Has the provider given thought to the most common business use cases for their product? And have they developed some step-by-step instructions on how to execute those use cases? The fifth item on our list is data normalization. Another important item for legal ops to review is whether the API provider normalizes the data streaming out of its APIs. Just having the coverage you need is not enough. Without data normalization, the process of organizing, enriching, and standardizing data, your team might be walking into a bad data in, bad data out situation that could corrupt internal reporting and disrupt your operations. So some questions here. Does the API provider normalize its data? Does it use best-in-class normalization on the entities included in its data sets? Does it use other data sources such as bar data, Secretary of State data, EDGAR data, and other trusted public data sources to normalize the data from its APIs? The sixth item for you to look into is data interoperability. Legal operations teams looking for external data sources most often are not seeking to ingest legal data to be used in a silo. They want to be able to weave the external data they collect with other internal data sources, such as financial data, operational data, and experience data. Some questions here. Does the API provider use common classifications and a uniform data structure for the data sets served up through its APIs? Does the provider leverage industry standards, such as the Standards Advancement for the Legal Industry, or SALI, to ensure data interoperability? Seventh on our list of considerations are API integrations. Few legal operations teams have the engineering bench required for resource-intensive API integrations. This makes the ease of API integrations vital for the vast number of legal ops teams, and the provider's existing integrations a key element in choosing the right API solution for your team. Questions here to consider are, what's the lead time and resource requirement on being able to pull out usable data and integrate it into your systems? How do the provider's existing API integrations align with your current tech stack? Do they have a roadmap for building out future integrations? And are they willing to work with you to integrate their APIs into your mission-critical applications? Coming in at number 8 on our list is API maturity. Regardless of the type of API provider your team is reviewing, the maturity of its offering is an inherently important distinguishing factor when selecting the right API for your team. Take a serious look at the evolution of a provider's offering and be cautious of APIs developed without user feedback and input. Some questions here to think about are, does the API provider have next generation APIs developed from enterprise client feedback? Or are their APIs first generation, still in beta, or possibly an early stage alpha release? Do they have an active API development roadmap with regular release updates? Can they develop new API endpoints to fit your business use cases and data needs? The ninth item on our list is support services. A pivotal and often overlooked item to consider is the level of support services the provider makes available. Does the API provider offer on-demand support services? Do they provide you with a white glove service or more of a hands-off self-service approach? Do they have solutions engineers to assist with developing API queries, automating data pulls, and exploring data sets? What other types of support staff are available for handling account management issues you may face? The last and likely most important consideration from our top 10 list is data readiness, which requires some candid self-reflection on where you are in your own data journey. Your team's data readiness greatly impacts whether you're ready to integrate APIs and whether you need to look at external partners to help move your team to the finish line. So some questions here. Are you ready to integrate APIs into your data infrastructure? Do you have any existing internal or external API integrations? If you don't have internal engineering capabilities, are you willing to engage managed service providers to develop integrations? Some other questions to think about are, do you have a data strategy? Have you invested in cleaning up your own data? Are you in the cloud? Do you have a data warehouse or a data lake? And finally, do you have the right teams and budgeted resources in place? Now that we've talked about some of the best practices for selecting the right API provider, let's cover some starting points for how your team can begin leveraging APIs. For corporate legal departments with anything more than a drip of litigation happening, and especially those with thousands or even hundreds of thousands of cases ongoing at any moment, a great place to start with APIs is tracking your litigation and automating the collection and capture of data and documents connected to your cases. In terms of low-hanging fruit, tracking litigation by using external API solutions from vendors provides corporate legal operations teams with a couple of immediate benefits and is one of the least sophisticated use cases for APIs, as it typically requires the least amount of development time and process redesign. Some of the immediate benefits are drastic reduction of the amount of manual data collection and entry connected to managing your litigation, removing the potential for human error associated with manual data entry at scale, potential reductions in workforce. You no longer need an army of paralegals or analysts constantly copying and pasting data, and increased turnaround time on decision-making. With data for your litigation being ingested into your matter management systems and your other databases, your in-house counsel can make faster decisions on what to do next in litigation. And you no longer have to wait on outside counsel to tell you what's going on in your litigation. Another example use case for corporate legal operations teams connected to leveraging outside data sources via an API is enriching your internal databases on the experience of your outside counsel. Most legal ops teams have a decent handle on the matters their panel firms are handling for their legal needs, but what about those same firms' broader legal experience representing other clients? Consider what would happen if a new legal issue is impacting your business, and you don't know if any of your current panel firms have the experience you need. Rather than sending out an RFP to a vast number of your panel firms to cast a wide net in the hopes of finding the firms who could service your needs, you can leverage outside data sources to enrich your internal databases and create a better picture of the previous experience your firms have representing other clients in specific areas of law, and without having to ask them for it. APIs are a great option for enriching your outside counsel databases and also helping your legal ops team create more robust master data sets for your panel firms. Another good starting point for using APIs is creating your own internal data pipelines to connect the most critical systems you have together. Connecting your systems together can drastically reduce the manual efforts to gather the data you need for better reporting and give you real-time insights into the critical processes and workflows essential to your legal department. However, an important word of caution is to make sure you get your data house in order before implementing internal APIs and building data pipelines. There's nothing worse than flooding your systems with bad or unstructured data, so make sure your systems are ready to speak to each other before bringing them into the same room. On the more sophisticated end of leveraging APIs, the real holy grail is to find ways to merge together internal and external sources of data to gain insights that neither dataset could produce on its own. To help spark your imagination here on what's possible and stick to our focus today on litigation data, consider the possibility of leveraging internal settlement data combined with external data sources from an API. In a recent article I wrote for ILTA's blog on developing early case assessments for corporate legal departments, I talked about this specific use case and noted that when developing early case assessments, it's natural to want to just focus on extracting insights from case complaints and docket data connected to litigation that your company is involved in. But one of the real advantages that legal ops team with large volumes of litigation have is their historical case settlement data, which is often sealed and inaccessible to opposing parties and opposing counsel. Settlement data provides corporate legal teams with an incredibly rich source of often untapped insights and answers to key questions connected to the actual financial value or exposure that certain types of litigation present for your business. To go beyond just gathering insights and building analytics for your settlements data, consider combining your settlement data with external court data gathered from an API, and then leveraging generative AI on top of those combined data sources to answer deeper questions about the factors impacting your settlements and what opportunities there are for reducing your risk and protecting your company in future litigation. Building your own internal proprietary LLM or large language model to extract insights from your historical case settlements can prove to be a secret weapon that your legal team can continuously sharpen to produce better and better intelligence for your early case assessment barometers. To learn more about this use case and other suggestions for building out your own early case assessment tools, you can find a link to the ILTA blog in the comments below. For a quick recap, today we've covered what APIs are, what some of the best practices are for selecting APIs, and some good starting points for leveraging APIs. Thank you all for watching. Make sure to keep an eye out for new and insightful content from the ILTA YouTube channel, and have a wonderful day.